good. Okay, call to order the meeting work session on April 2nd of 2025. Mr. Drewer, do roll call, please.
Mr. Bennington.
Here.
Ms. Larimer.
Here.
Ms. Minke. Ms. Roland Miller.
Here. Stand and we'll do the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Like a 10-inch block. Fathers.
Maybe the chair.
My father's yelling. Safety briefing, we're all aware of where everything is. So I'm going to move to 2.1. Our agenda that talks about the PI levy, some redistricting updates, and then 2 executive sessions. Could I have a motion to approve the budget or the agenda? We're just talking about budget.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll second that agenda.
Mr. Drewer, roll call, please.
Mr. Bennington.
Yes.
Ms. Larimer.
Yes.
Ms. Roland Miller.
Yes. Thanks. What's out going on there? 3.1, our permanent improvement levy. We are in the month before the election. So, Mr. Hostler,
Yeah.
turn it over to you.
Early voting starts next week.
Yeah, thanks. So we have a letter that will be going out to voters from the district explaining the permanent improvement levy and what it means. I know in Ohio there's basically three different kinds of levies. There's operational levies, which pay to keep the lights on, to keep the staff in the classrooms and keep the buses on the road. There is a bond issue, which is used to build new facilities or renovations or additions. And then there is the permanent improvement type of levy, which is used for anything that the state of Ohio considers to be permanent, which lasts longer typically than 5 years. So that's their idea of permanence. So for us here, we're asking the voters to approve a 5-year renewal. And I think that's important on a couple of different points. One, it is a renewal, so it's not a new tax. So this is really an important feature. What people are paying today is what they're going to be paying if this levy passes. So this is important. So this isn't an additional tax, it's what people are paying today. And it goes to maintain our buildings and investing in our facilities. It was first approved in 1980, and every 5 years it's been renewed or replaced. And of course we know that amount that it generates, roughly 1.7 million, doesn't cover all of our maintenance and preventative maintenance costs. But it is certainly a pretty big number, $1.7 million. So why this levy is important for us? We want to maintain our buildings. They're an investment that the community makes and into our infrastructure, and we need to keep that up. And it allows us to use that $1.7 million for this purpose. If this $1.7 million goes away, we're now having to pull it out of the general fund, which does fund teachers and bus drivers and other staff and the buses that are on the road. All of a sudden, there's $1.7 million less of that happening for us. So right now, it was passed 5 years ago, but right now it collects 1.17 mils. That's the amount of millage that it is listed. And again, in Ohio, for us to raise that specific dollar amount, the amount of millage it takes to do that gets reduced. Cost to homeowners per $100,000.
Tom, let me insert.
Yeah.
The questions come up with me. In the ballot language, it says 1.9 mils. And the reason for that is that's the maximum it can collect. So if property values dropped, the millage could go up to 1.9 mils to keep the 1.7 million collection. So people see, we're saying it's collecting 1.7, but the levy could collect as much as 1.9.
If property values drop.
Yeah.
If property values dropped. So people see the 1.9 and go, what's the, I just wanna make sure you understand that. Sorry, Tom.
Yeah, the 1.9 mils, the generating about 1.7 and the $3.41 a month that currently folks are paying is reflective of what's on the ballot per what Randy had just talked about. Also, because this levy is something that is, has been on the books and renewed or replaced every 5 years, it is still grandfathered, or the homestead rollback discounts still apply to this. So if it were to end and the board were to come back with a different, those homestead and rollback discounts would go away, which does impact local taxpayers. So the state is contributing a portion of the money that we generate because of this, qualification that this levy has. Defeating that, and not only would it lose money, but if we were to come back with another levy to replace that, or to a new levy to replace that levy that had been rejected, then that's where we would be. I think it's important to note just the age of our buildings. Last night we were at the junior high, and it's a 61-year-old building. And when you walk through the halls and you see the condition that it's in, it's really in phenomenal shape. The meeting that we're having today, although it doesn't serve students directly, is a 94-year-old building. And so, the average age of our active school buildings is almost 45 years old. So we're not a district that has new buildings, but I think if you were to talk to a number of residents about our facilities and their experiences either coming in to vote or attending an event or any of those kinds of things, I think they would be surprised at that. I hear that all the time, that, I had no idea that the new elementary school is 35 years old. So that's really important for us. The projects and what we do, I'm not going to go through these, but I think it's important that people, want to know what those dollars are going to generate. What are we going to do with those? And as you begin to look through those, the only thing that I would highlight is you see things like this is the Frank page that we have pulled up. It's the first slide that details this. Replacing 20 to 30-year-old doors. And on your home, your front door or garage door at 25 or 30 years old, probably you start looking at it thinking, it might be time. But imagine if you have 900 kids pushing on that door every day. That front door is going to get a little bit worn. So when you look at the rekeying the building, 30 years old, since we've rekeyed the building, we want to make sure that for safety purposes that we're updating those things. Window replacement, roofs, those are all things that we're scheduled to do. We have a maintenance plan, and I think that's very important that people recognize. And we have a schedule, and this is essential for us as we outline, the dollars that are needed to execute that plan. And these dollars are a big portion of that. So the same kind of thing that will point out, the age of, the original, gutters and everything that goes with that original. When we're talking about a building that's, 60 years old or nearly 60 years old, I think those are certainly things that are, we want to highlight. As we go to Woodland, one of our newer buildings, built in the 70s. Again, you're seeing 25 years old, 30 years old, and that's important. The junior high, the building we were in yesterday, as we were walking out with the rain that we'd experienced, there was a new kind of leak that popped up in the main hallway that we were looking at. Those portions of the roof are 30 years old and on a flat roof, which, that's the structure that we have. We do a great job of maintaining it, but there's a lifespan, and we have exceeded that lifespan because of the care that we've done. But you can see major sections of that roof are dedicated. And again, exterior door replacement for safety and age of the doors, that's $400,000 alone in fiscal year 2030. this levy generates 1.7 million. So you can see just one project like that soaks up so much of these funds. And then the high school, again, a building that's over 20 years old, starting to get into some of the roof areas there. And then across the district, there's things that we're doing with instruments are part of this. The emergency contingency funding that we have funds for that purpose, parking lots, and then a breakdown of the costs, the dollars coming in, the dollars that we look to spend, and rolling over some of that contingency if we don't get into it, but typically we do. But again, we're looking at this levy first passed in 1980 generated, roughly $1.5 to $1.7 million. And in 1980, we only had 5 school buildings in Perrysburg. And that $1.7 million, that went pretty far in covering the maintenance and costs of those newer buildings in 1980. Now those buildings are significantly older, and we've added 3 additional buildings since that time. And if we were to do an equivalent of what is in 1980 dollars, what is $1.7 million worth, today it would be $6.5 million. So that gives you an idea of the impact that levy had in 1980, and we're just holding on to those funds as long as we can and utilizing them and maximizing them. So what happens if the levy is rejected? We know that the board would have to make some decisions in terms of, what would happen next if the levy is rejected by the voters. We know that $1.7 million we begin to have to account for. How are we going to replace the roof that's leaking at the junior high? Where would those dollars come from? The safety and security of rekeying the different entries and doors inside the building, outside the building, the ADA doorknobs that we want to replace. Where will those dollars come from? Because of the things that we have to do. And they would come from our general fund. And, that is, now we're making tough decisions, which we've already had to make tough decisions. Now that $1.7 million and that, where does it come from? And now we're talking about what programs go away, what types of positions go away, so that we can afford to replace a roof that is no longer really working well for us. So we've had lots of informational opportunities. We have many informational opportunities ahead, so people can understand this if they have questions. We are doing these at the different locations so people can actually get into the buildings and see how those dollars are being invested in the condition of those buildings, and making sure that they can see firsthand the care that we're taking, and our deferred maintenance plan and how it works, and having staff there that can answer those questions directly. So there's a QR code to get information that's there, and we're certainly happy to answer any questions. So just wanted to briefly go through this, and happy to answer any questions that folks may have at this point.
Any questions that we're receiving from community members that weren't covered that we need answers for? Yeah, I think one of the pieces that I always find interesting, having served on the Historic Landmarks Commission and being a big history lover, is the concept that these are old buildings. I think, again, how they've been maintained and then how they've been updated for current use. I mean, there certainly are challenges related to that, but I think anyone who's ever left this country and gone to a country older than ours kind of realizes that our concept of old is very relative. So I do think it's amazing the maintenance that's been done, and I do think being able to share that plan, the schedule for the maintenance over the next 5 years and how those funds will be used is really valuable. Speaking of history, I actually went back to 1980 in the archives of the journal, because that's something I do every once in a while because it's fun to me. And in 1980, it actually, if you calculate it out, was $70 about per 100,000 back then, which is over $270 that this would have cost per year for $100,000 in our inflated. And we're asking folks for what, $40.92 per 100,000 a year. I think it's very affordable, and I think personally I'll say that to me that seems like a really affordable way to support the district and maintain these quote historic. I mean, most of them don't even make vintage, let alone we're not selling these on any antique store yet, except this one.
And by the way, this levy does generate, new construction generates new money with this. That's why it's up to 1.7. It wasn't originally 1.7, but new construction adds to the amount. It's a fixed rate levy. So anyway, it's not a huge amount, but that's why it's grown to up to 1.7.
I think one of the things we wanted to talk about was kind of our involvement. Obviously, we have these sessions that we're back on that slide 15. I'd sent out a doodle, and that's more to just make sure, one, that there's a board member. I think it's good for one of us to be present. We can coordinate with Mr. Hassler. We may want to take a slide to present or something, but to be available. But I also, as always, we need to make sure that we're not calling these as meetings, so just the two of us. So if you're planning on going to one, if you could make sure you fill in that doodle. I think one of the other things that we talked about is, I think I've mentioned to all of you, but I apologize if I haven't, whether or not we would want to write a letter of support for this together, or if we individually each want to write our own letter and kind of coordinate sharing those. I think it's important for us as board members to at least speak to this out in the community, and at least explain our reasoning for putting this on the ballot for everyone. So I don't know which we would prefer to do. I know we can't ask people to vote for it in this role, but as individual community members, we certainly can do that.
I'd be supportive of either path on that one, be it bring a letter to this into a meeting with a resolution to approve it and go forward with it as a group, or I'll certainly write one personally if we don't go that path. But I'd encourage us to go that first way. This is that important, and we'd ask on feedback that I'm hearing in the community. I'm hearing good support for this. I'm hearing people get it. It's not a new tax. It's $40 a month. The dollars are spent a year.
For 100,000.
It's $40 a year.
That they're already paying.
For 100,000, yeah.
Word salad. It's really
Yeah,
sorry about that. $40. Yeah. And money that doesn't. We saw that chart that doesn't even cover. It was a bit of a shortfall from what the actual projects are that are out there. And I still go back to when we were under the bond issue, and we had the UFCC come out here and take a look at the buildings and the compliments they gave with what we're spending the dollars, to your point, Ms. Roland Miller, keeping these buildings up. So the dollars are necessary. Those that are paying attention are supportive of this, and I think it's important. Our challenge will be to continue to get that message out. So whatever ways I can do that, I'm in for it.
I still like the idea of us each turning one in. I think, yeah.
We're able to
Spread it out. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Just as a constant reminder in the paper, for everyone else. Now, are you saying that we have to write this letter and submit them to you, and you will distribute them or approve them, or?
I'd take a volunteer to do such an event. If someone would be willing to coordinate that, I would appreciate that, actually.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
If you're going to write an individual letter, I have to have them turned into the journal by noon on Friday. So, and since early voting starts this week, if anybody's got one in their head that they can prep out, then I can get that submitted.
Does anyone want to take this week?
I can do this week.
And then and we'll coordinate the other 3 weeks. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Ms. Lau. All right, and of course, there is a citizen group raising funds, and so I think the more if we talk to people, we can certainly point them to that group that's getting information out to the community as well. Okay, anything else, other ideas for our engagement? Okay. And then the other piece, and I'm not sure I have an answer to this yet, but we do have that from the last regular meeting, what door number are we going to take if this is rejected, which I'm not really sure I want to talk about, but there is a sense of, well, what is the cost if this is rejected by the community. We had that it could just go as it is again on the November ballot. We could just drop it and say we're going to figure out how to take 1.7 from the budget for the general fund as needed. We could put a new amount on the November ballot that loses that homestead and rollback discounts, and I think normally we've kind of calculated that at about 10% of the value. You'd pay another additional 10%. You also could take the same thing, lose the funding next year, and we could put it on the May 2026 ballot. So when I think about this, I think partly what I would choose to do partly has to do with if it was rejected, how much it's rejected by. I think that would have a significant impact on what I would choose to do next. So I think it's a little hypothetical. I think I'm reticent personally to want to take another 1.7 million from the general fund. So that's kind of where I am. I don't know if if anyone else has been given some thought to that.
Oh, yeah, I'm where you're at too on that thought, and I also give a lot of, consideration to that homestead exemption that I think is important to keep in place here in this environment. So, without, say you're gonna want to I guess I'm saying I'm gonna want to take another attempt at it in November without saying, let's take another attempt at it in November for some of these two numbers. But that's what weighs in this decision heavily on me, is keeping that exemption in place.
I agree with that. Hopefully our taxpayers understand that even if at a later time we go back for the same amount, once we lose that homestead and rollback, that's 100% on them, whatever that amount is, versus stuff coming from the state, from everybody else in the state. So
it's like a help us help you type of
exactly.
And I think in light of the continued concerns about our regular funding, base student cost funding and that declining, to look at one, it would be nice to get some money from the state that we can while we can, but two would be is that losing having that rejected and potentially losing funding from the state as well would be a double impact on the general fund and what we can afford to do right now. So
it certainly then becomes along those lines the conversation about how do we manage through that with another round of cuts.
Yep.
Well, you still have to decide that, the levy ask.
Yes, that all goes into the living ask. All right. Other questions, concerns, worries? All right. Thank you, Mr. Hostler. Thanks for some discussion on that. And we're going to move to 3.2 and the redistricting update to Ms. Price.
Yes, thank you. So we are well underway in our efforts, and I'll kind of summarize. And if anyone wants a more detailed explanation, we can certainly schedule a time and can show you kind of how the magic works. But basically, we have re-exported our current data. Keep in mind, since January, there's a lot of movement, even within the district, people changing addresses. And we've got our kindergartners placed. We're at 316 kindergartners registered. Last year at this time, we were around 321, so we're right around where we were. We picked up around 32 kids over the summer last year. So we can kind of anticipate that, and you'll see in the projections, we should have space to accommodate that with the number of teachers and sections we've allotted. But basically, as we've re-exported this data, we also looked at the updated walk zone policy, or the self-transport zone policy that has had a first reading, and looked at some of those adjustments. So basically, as we started doing that, we had Frank a little too high for comfort and Toast still a little too low. And so we were looking at, okay, where could we make an adjustment that would be like least upsetting to what people are already doing. We didn't want to move people that weren't moving. And so we have a solution, and I think it makes the most sense. So I think it's going to be easiest to show you. So if you recall, this is our current map. This is the patchwork quilt. And the area I'm going to talk about is right here. So it is, we've got Roachton, 5 Point, Fort Meigs, and Dixie Highway. It's this blue area right here. So this area is currently woodland. All of that area, based on Plan A, this was Plan A, all of that area was set to go to Frank. So it's this area right here. It is woodland now. With Plan A, it was set to go to Frank. So our proposal, or the plan, is for this area now to go to Toad. So it still keeps the boundaries clean, and it actually makes that boundary 5 Point, Roachton, Roachton, Fort Meigs, 5 Point Road. So it makes that kind of a clear line. And all of those students were woodland students, actually except for 2. There's 2 that were open enrolled someplace else. But all the students in that area are woodland now, and they were already scheduled to go to Frank. So our proposal is to make this change, and I email all those families and let them know that they would now go to Toth. So it's people that were moving, but they're moving, instead of to Frank, moving to Toth. And what that does then to the projections, so what this does, this is how you can see the projections even out overall. So much closer, like if you remember currently we have about 185 student difference between buildings. This cuts it down to about 90 student difference between all the buildings. And currently we have about an 8 teacher difference between buildings. This cuts it down to a 4 teacher difference from the lowest to the highest building. And it does keep our class sizes, again, we have that threshold as 25 and under. It still gives plenty of room to add kindergartners in throughout the district before the start of the year. First grade's also an area where we tend to see a bigger jump, and so you can kind of see there's room enough in first grade too. This hits our target. Remember, we wanted to reduce 5 to 6 teachers, 5 to 6 sections, classrooms. This is currently having us reduce 6, so we've hit that target. I would like to leave a 1 teacher cushion, so we may be at 5, because if you see second grade is kind of my concern. We're bumping up to 25 in second grade at Frank already, also close at Woodland. But fourth grade we're not as concerned about, because remember we're going to allow interdistrict open enrollment for 4th grade only. So essentially we should be able to even out and keep those 4th grade classes under 25 by the number of approvals that we can do for people to stay in their home building at some other places. So we should be in good shape to be able to maintain a 25 or fewer and still be able to do this, keeping out a more balanced between buildings. And then if you look at the other thing I kind of wanted to show you, this kind of shows you then what we did is we looked at the subdivisions kind of coming online that are still under development, and trying to look at with our redistricting plan where those would go. So even though Fort Meigs, it's a little lower than they are now, but still a little bit higher than we wanted. But they're losing Canterbury, and that's going to help them a lot to be able to not grow as quickly. Harrison Landing, you'll see basically like Summerfield, that area I was just talking about that's now going to go to Toth. Harrison Landing is that whole area behind Kroger. So we really need to shift some other places away from Woodland, and they're gonna take Harrison Landing because it's over on that side of town. So essentially, this is kind of how it shakes out. You can see where those subdivisions currently are and then kind of where they're going. So we try to kind of even some of that out a bit. Again, this is our best projections we can make with the information that we have. We've been working really closely with our elementary principals. Our plan is to be able to email the families directly impacted by this change, like hopefully tomorrow. And then we would like to send out the 4th grade interdistrict open enrollment link on like Monday. We'll maybe probably send an email Friday saying like the email's coming Monday. We'll approve as many as we can to maintain balanced class sizes. And then that would go out next week. And once we approve those, then we're going to send individual letters to every family moving. And basically it'll be from all 4 elementary principals, letting them know where their building assignment is for the next year. And then also listing the welcome events and the orientation events that are going to happen to make that transition smooth. The principals have already been creating a Google Doc that has all kinds of information, whether a child gets intervention or ELL services, or they've already been working through that and developing that transition process. We've been working closely with our special education department and looking at the IEPs of students and what the caseloads would look like and how we need to allocate our intervention specialists. So again, the goal is to basically, by the end of April, all families would have received notice of where they're going, information about the welcome events happening, and we would be well underway. It's pretty tedious. There's some roads that aren't, we've had kindergartners that enroll on roads that aren't now that we have the boundaries drawn is great because we know where to place them, but they're not necessarily on our road code list. And so we have, one person that just enrolled recently and they're moving into a house in September that's not on, wasn't listed yet. So, we will update then to we're planning within our enrollment page to basically put the map and the road code book on that enrollment page. So that way people would be able to access that whenever. After the second reading of the self-transport zone policy in April, we'll also be uploading a self-transport zone document on so people could see if their child would be eligible for bus transportation or what. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Questions?
Brooke, I was looking at this last night and I was just awestruck that you guys have this much done for next year for roads that aren't even built yet and people moving into it. I mean, the whole you said magic earlier, and it's magic indeed. It's incredible that you can do what you've done. But I'm a little fuzzy about the 4th grade open enrollment. So does that include all 4th graders or just the 4th graders that have been told they're going to move?
Just the 4th graders that would be moving.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yes,
they
it would
have a choice if they're at Toth now and they were told that they were going to. I don't even know if that's a thing. And they were told that they were going to move, they would have a choice to stay
Yes.
and they would be open enrollment.
Yeah, we would essentially send it out to everyone, but likely if you've been in your building for 4 years, you're not going to want to go to a different building if you're not moving. Do you know what I mean?
What about transportation then?
So for interdistrict open enrollment, you transport yourself.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yep, you transport yourself. So that'll be in the message. And that's always been the case if anyone applies for interdistrict. It's only if we force transfer someone that we have to provide transportation. So like if we've had situations in the past where, classes are already up to 26, 27 in a building. So new kids that come in, maybe their space is a different building and we say for the last 3 months, we're going to place you here because we're full other places. We're supposed to make a good faith effort through the negotiated agreement to keep classes 25 or under where we can. Then we would transport. So that's where the balancing out across the district is helpful. But yes, it would be typically your fourth grade families that would have to be moving, we are assuming a lot of those families may want to finish out their fourth grade. Not all of them. Some of them, again, since we're keeping neighborhoods together, I do think there'll be people that are like, well, I'm just going to go with all my neighborhood because I get bus transportation and we're all going to this different place. So we really won't know until we see how many people request it, and we'll approve as many as we can. If we have one building that if our approvals would take us to being at 28 kids a class, we may not be able to approve every single person, but we're hoping it evens out enough that we could be able to accommodate everyone that would want to stay in their home building.
In that case, would it be a first come, first
It's going to be
served?
time stamped. Yep.
Yeah.
It'll be, that's why we're thinking we're sending an email out Friday, letting people know, the inter-district link will be sent at, 5:30 on Monday evening. So like, we'll give people the weekend, and I think that's probably the most fair way to do it, to give people a heads up that it's coming and what time it's coming, and then send it out at that time and give people a week to do that. Again, our hope is we can accommodate, everybody that wants to, but we just don't know what the interest is. So, if you've got 15 people at Frank and 15 people at Woodland, it's a straight switch. No big deal, right? But we just don't know until we see what people want. So,
Just follow it along.
yeah. But we want to do that process first before we send the individual letters about placement for the next year. So.
I'm trying to, great job on this. I'm trying to put myself in your shoes when you all realized that, as Plan A was shaking out, that you had kind of some rebalancing to do.
Yeah.
You make it sound easy, but one, I'm sure, none of this is an easy decision because it impacts people. But, kudos for finding a way to do it that is going to be as least impactful on the second iteration here as possible, and to make it make the most sense.
Yeah, we talked about do we need to split a subdivision again, but I think that we can keep that boundary, and it's still, again, the map still looks great compared to what we have now, and those lines are much cleaner, so it's a lot easier when someone is looking at that to say oh, I live within these roads, so I know now I'm going here. It should make it a little bit cleaner. I think there's a plan to, again, we want to communicate with all families first, but in May, then I believe I'm going to head over to meet with some local realtors to kind of show them this, to make sure some people are in the loop with the changes. A lot of times the problem is there's some things online, Niche has things online, and it just shows you the school closest to you, which confuses people a lot because they'll come in thinking they're going one place, and we're actually, that's not where you're going to go. So we plan to do that in May with a couple of the realtor groups, I think. So.
That's a good idea.
I think also putting it out on the website.
Yes, yeah. We're going to put it under our enrollment tab, and we'll make it accessible to people. And I think as secretaries start to referencing people there, when people call, it should be easier to find. So that's where we are. Right.
Thank you, Ms. Bryce, for all your work and to the team working on this. This time, I'd like a motion to move an executive session. We have two purposes. The first is to enter into executive session for the purpose of appointing an official, and for the purpose of charges or complaints against an employee. Ms. Larimer, second. Ms. Menke. Mr. Hill, roll call, please.
Ms. Larimer,
Yes.
Ms. Menke,
Yes.
Mr. Bennington,
Yes.
Ms. Rowland Miller.
Yes.
Can I confirm there'll be no business following the executive sessions, because I'll stop the recording.